when people ask me if I'm a balat tshuva, it means one who masters the teshuva. I say, no way. I'm always in the process. And you know what? That birthing, if you lose that movement, even if you're fully observant, it's not a life. You don't want to be satisfied, like without energy to move forward. So birthing is it's a dynamic process.
And it's isn't that what life is about anyways? It's like,
well, that's what life is. Exactly. Life is movement.
yeah.
Right? That's movement. So the mind is the meditation. The prefrontal cortex is getting stronger every time you pay attention and choose to pay attention and bring your focus back. You're strengthening what we call in Jewish seichel, what they call in Lashon HaKodesh and in our circles, Chabad. That's the intellectual faculties. So that's the executive, the CEO of the brain. You want to strengthen your boss of the brain, your brain boss. And every time you strengthen the brain boss, you can choose whether or not you're going to pig out or you're going to eat 2 pieces.
Yeah.
You're gonna watch one more video that you keep scrolling in on YouTube, or say, you know what, it's enough for tonight, right? Yeah. Or say something that you blurt out or not. We need to become choosers.
Well, good morning, Miss Devorah. How are you today?
Baruch Hashem. Thank God.
Yeah, really thank you very much for sharing your time and coming to speak with me a lot about Torah therapeutics and meditation and a lot we're going to discuss.
It's my honor. You're doing some pretty cool stuff yourself.
Thank you so much. To get started, I'd really love to hear a little bit about your background and how you really got into Torah therapeutics and into meditation. I listened to you had a conversation with the Torah and Science back in 2015, and I was really kind of attracted to a lot of the work that you're doing and sharing, because meditation has become a major kind of part and like passion in my life, because it's really, as you know, and you've shared, it has so many, benefits across the board, from health and, pretty much every area, from your heart health to your brain health.
Yes.
It helps with, visualization, and the way that our science is growing with epigenetics and the new biologies. It's really just, it's incredible to me. And I think it's a major tool. Huh?
Yeah, it's an important tool. I think anybody who uses a smartphone now needs to meditate.
Absolutely.
The people who don't need to meditate are probably, let's say, in tribal Africa, weaving their baskets. So that's their meditation. And they're taking hydroxychloroquine. So they're not getting COVID either.
Yeah.
So just a little bit about my background. And we may need, Solomon, we may need to meet again, because there's a lot to share.
Yeah.
But just to high speed it, Baruch Hashem. So to high speed it up to the present. So I was brought up in Buffalo, where I live now, as in a Reformed Jewish congregation. My mother was the first woman president of the temple. So I had a good feeling for Judaism, a positive attitude.
Yeah.
But as I said, it was a Reform temple. And I asked a lot of questions in Sunday school. I was a little ADD and very inquisitive, and, and they had no good answers for me. They would always be like brushed off. The questions I asked maybe were too deep, or they didn't have the knowledge. And I was frustrated. As I got a little older, I asked my mother if I could join the conservative Hebrew high school. And that was a little bit of a hassle, because that was another carpool for her. But I went to that and I asked them questions, and there were no good answers. And then I went to college, and I went to college as a voice major, because I thought I would become a chazan and a rabbi. So what I did was I started singing in the Hebrew Union College choir there. I was a music major in the college. Across the street was the rabbinical college, where soon I'm going to want to go to grad school after I graduate from college and become a rabbi, or you might call a rabbette. And I went there and I looked and asked questions, and it was not satisfactory. But I sang in the choir, and it was a good Jewish experience, but not as spiritually.
Yeah.
It was a good Jewish and music experience, but it didn't really catapult me further. And I was just asking a lot of questions until one day I met a Chabad rabbi on campus, and I asked him questions, and he had answers. And one of the questions I asked him was about a practice that I had been in, because I told you I was a little wild and a little crazy and a little ADD as a kid. And my teenage girlfriend's mother, when I was in a sophomore going into junior year in high school, she told me I needed to meditate to, cool my jets. And she took me to the TM Center. Then transcendental meditation was really the only thing that was visible out there. And it has roots, literal idolatrous roots in Hinduism.
Okay.
I didn't know enough about Judaism, but when I went through the initiation and they made me kneel in front of an altar, in other words, there was literally a puja ceremony, a Hindu ceremony. I said, I'm not allowed to do this. They said, don't worry, you only need to do it once. And I felt a little betrayed, but I was stuck. I went through it. I had to offer. They told me to bring food, flowers. You gave an offering, a handkerchief filled with things. I mean, it was, I was just jarred, but okay, you only do it once. And then they whisper a mantra in your ear that you're not allowed to utter ever again. You're not allowed to bring it out. It's just that's your focal point.
Yeah.
Right? Because in every meditation, or most meditations, there's something that you're either focusing on or letting go to focus on something else. And this was our focal point, which was the sound, which I'm not going to utter out loud, because actually it's the name of a Hindu goddess. And when I found that out, when I asked the rabbi, is a Jew allowed to meditate? Remember, I told you I met this rabbi on campus? He said, well, the Lubavitcher Rebbe just spoke about it this summer.
How synchronistic.
Yeah. We call that hashgacha pratistic. Divinely provided details that God is looking out for you. So just when I was ready for Judaism and I could meet this rabbi, the Rebbe had just spoken about TM and the problems with transcendental meditation because of the idolatrous roots. But the Rebbe is so way ahead of the times. He'd already approached Dr. Twersky in the 60s about developing a kosher but pariv, not Jewish, neutral, clinical format of meditation to calm the nerves. Anyway, he didn't get involved in it. That's another story. But the Rebbe spoke about this, and the rabbi on campus, the Chabad rabbi, said to me, as long as there's no idolatrous elements. Well, I remembered the puja ceremony, but I didn't think that sound meant anything. Now, meanwhile, I've met him, and, I'll probably meet him soon again because he's there on campus. And then I go home for a little holiday vacation, and I go to the University of Buffalo bookstore, and I say, you know what, my meditations are very boring. Just sitting and saying that sound inside my head, cookie, 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 cookie. That wasn't the sound, but you know what I'm saying.
That would be a funny mantra.
Right? That was, a mantra, a funny mantra. Well, that's Cookie Monster's mantra. So Cookie Mon. Anyway, so saying that sound over and over in my head, as an ADD girl, now for 4 years, 20 minutes twice a day, which is a lot of meditating for an American-born, non-monastic, non-Hindu or Buddhist little girl. So it was getting boring. So I go to this university bookstore, and I pull out a book that says choose your own mantra.
Mhm.
I said for $6.95, I think it was like a Bantam paperback, I could get hundreds of mantras. If I go back to the TM center, they're going to charge me $150 to get another sound. And they have to do that stupid ceremony again.
Mhm.
So I opened the book. I didn't open to a particular page. Let's just say we'll go back to that synchronicity that you talked about.
Yeah.
God opened the page. There were hundreds of mantras. It opened up to my
One you had.
mantra.
Yeah.
And my heart fell into my kishkas. And it said, Hindu deity, goddess of the earth. I go, oh, shoot. Slammed the book,
Yeah.
put it back on the shelf, and said, I can't meditate anymore. But it didn't matter. 4 years, 20 minutes twice a day, it turned on all by itself. And it went at 8 o'clock in the morning before school, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So cookie was doing its own thing, even though I wasn't intending to meditate. Then I started going to that rabbi's house, and I started getting into Judaism.
This is Rabbi Friedman?
No, but
Later.
You'll hear that part of the story in a quick moment. That was a gentleman who was working for the Chabad house in Cincinnati, where I went to school, where the rabbinical college was, right? Okay. So I was told to go to Minnesota, where Rabbi Manas Friedman was. We jokingly called it Minnesota. So I went to Minnesota to this study program. And I told Rabbi Friedman that I had this problem with this mantra that wouldn't turn itself off, that was going on in my head. And he had a wonderful explanation and suggestion that I use with my clients for other things. It's called a thought replacement or a distraction.
Yeah.
So he told me, memorize the 12 Torah passages for children. Mm-hmm. It's called in the army of Hashem, Tzivos Hashem, that little children learn these Torah passages and memorize them. They include things like Shema Yisrael and Bereshis bara Elokim and V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You should love your fellow Jew as yourself. Very, very basic things from various parts of the Torah. And I memorized them. And when the mantra came in, I pushed it out with the phrase, and lo and behold, the mantra left me. And I was scared to death of meditating. So I became observant and stayed far away from meditation until then I got my graduate degree, and I became a social worker, and I became a therapist. And I start reading the research and seeing how meditation is, and we're talking like a long time ago, like 20 years ago, before all of the big research, more recent. And I said, oh, yeah, the Rebbe talked about it. Oh, and then I started studying it with my rabbi, with other people, and realized that I need to implement this in my practice. And I've successfully implemented, first it was relaxation and hypnosis recordings, but then I realized, hearing different things, that the Rebbe actually prefers meditation to hypnosis, because hypnosis is someone else doing it to and for you. Meditation is you doing it yourself.
Wow.
Unless it's self-hypnosis.
The
Rebbe wasn't opposed to hypnosis, especially in very severe cases, but he did not favor it because you're under someone else's aegis. I started getting into it, researching it. I've developed a few albums, as you see on my website. I've got 3 albums. Hopefully, I'm coming out with an app of my kosher meditations. None of them is Jewish. So you won't hear any Jewish philosophy in those, because the Rebbe was very explicit in his talk to not have anything of any format of religion, not Jewish and not
summary of like the points I think you have on your website, like a download.
Yes, I have free meditation downloads there as well. Yeah, people can go. It's a hard spell. It's Torah without an H, Therapeutics.com, Therapeutics. So Therapeutics.com. And there are lots of free downloads there. There's memes you can download, but there are meditations. There are free recordings. There's I call it my signature meditation, the beginner's meditation on the breath, which is free, with the introduction and explanation, which is free, because at the end of the Rebbe's talk, he talks about how we live in America and we can really advertise very easily. This is way before the internet era, 1979. And he talks about how in such a place, we should be able to freely disseminate it. And I took that literally. And I said, okay, one recording to get a person their feet in the door. I've got people who use this 2 or 3 times a day. This is their meditation. It's only 6 minutes long, but it's really simple and powerful. So that's how I got into it. I also see and have seen, that's how I developed Torah therapeutics, was I kept bumping into stuff in the Torah that sounded like, this is neuroscience.
Exactly.
This is lifestyle medicine. This is self-regulation. This is meditation. This is positive psychology.
Yeah.
The Torah knew it all along. And so then I did a lot more research. The Rebbe has a lot of material on holistic wellness. The preference of the Torah is Ani Hashem Rofecha. I, God, will heal you. You take care of yourself. Hishamer Lacha. Be very careful. It says we need to be V'nishmartem es nafsho sechem. God says, guard your souls very carefully. How do you guard a soul? By taking care of the body too. By taking care of the soul, the body, and the mind.
Well, it's all one. It's all
one. Exactly. So if we can learn tools and techniques from the inside and make our lifestyle healthier, our environment, our friends, what we eat, how much we sleep, do we have a synagogue, lahavdil, or a church, or a spiritual interest? Do we have people who illuminate us and enlighten us? It's a whole being. So my approach, one of the first things I teach some of my clients, especially ones who are very activated and very anxious and flipping out, to calm their nerves. So I teach them a 3-legged stool approach, body, mind, and soul, one activity a day. People say, I don't have time to meditate, right? So I can't give them 20 minutes twice a day. If I'm lucky, they'll take 3 minutes or 6 minutes, but we get their foot in the door and start them that way. So the mind is the meditation. The prefrontal cortex is getting stronger every time you pay attention and choose to pay attention and bring your focus back. You're strengthening what we call in Jewish seichel, what they call in Lashon HaKodesh and in our circles, Chabad. That's the intellectual faculties. So that's the executive, the CEO of the brain. You want to strengthen your boss of the brain, your brain boss. And every time you strengthen the brain boss, you can choose whether or not you're going to pig out or you're going to eat 2 pieces. You're gonna watch one more video that you keep scrolling in on YouTube, or say, you know what, it's enough for tonight, right? Or say something that you blurt out or not. We need to become choosers. So that's for the mind. The body is, I teach a slow, relaxed breathing technique. I call it the breathing contest. That's also for free on my website. Click through my blog and you'll see the last few weeks I'm focusing on breathing, right? Then we're going to go into meditation on my blog posts. But the breathing contest is you breathe in through the nose slowly, breathe out through a small stream with your mouth, like a coffee stir straw hole or a swizzle stick of a cocktail. You know, I know you've never had a cocktail. You're underage. Just joking. So you're blowing out very slowly.
That young.
And little by little, as you inhale slowly and deeply and you exhale slowly and deeply, it slows the heartbeat. It relaxes the whole system.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for years.
Mm-hmm.
My doctor cannot believe my pulse. I'm wearing a Fitbit. So right now we're talking, look at, this is us talking right now. I'm so relaxed, 56, that's cuckoo, right? Do you know what resting pulse should be for an adult, especially someone my age? You don't even know my age.
You know what?
This is resting. My resting pulse is 52. You would think that I was on the basketball court with you every day and I was jogging every day. This is an athlete's resting pulse.
Yeah.
And it's been lower when I'm not as responsible for things like during COVID. It even went up, believe it or not. So how do you gain that? Through meditating, through training your breathing. And I've been doing it for years.
There's some thank you for sharing all of that, and like your how you got introduced to meditation. You kind of went away for it for a little bit of a while before returning and finding more truth behind into it.
That the fact that it could be for anybody, you don't need to use any religion.
That's what's amazing.
This is the most important thing. This is what the Rebbe's focus was. And he, I'm sure, was talking about two very prominent people in the 70s who were doing a clinical meditation format. One was Patricia Carrington, may she rest in peace. She just died last year. The other, may he live and be well, is Herbert Benson of Harvard.
Yeah.
And Herbert Benson, I have a picture of his, a photograph of his, that he and I are sitting together. I took a few seminars at Harvard, and one is the Herbert Benson course in mind-body medicine.
The relaxation response.
Yeah, the relaxation response. He's the one in the 70s who wrote the book, The Relaxation Response, and then sequels and other things about meditation. He comes to the conclusion that there are just a few things you need. You need a quiet place, an object of focus, a relaxed attitude. That's it. That's it. It doesn't need to be anything else. And so you focus on that object of focus, and when your mind wanders, you bring it back to the object of focus. So even Torah personalities have taught meditation that's similar to that. For instance, in the last century, in the 20th century, isn't that weird to say? In the 20th century, early in the time of the Holocaust, pre-Holocaust, there was a Rebbe in Warsaw. And at that time, we were in the ghetto, the Warsaw ghetto. And his name was the Piasetzner Rebbe. And he taught young Hasidim how to live their lives in an emotionally healthful way. And one of the things he told his Avrechim, his young students, was that they should meditate and focus on the minute hand of a clock. This is an analog clock, maybe our listeners or our viewers don't know what that is, but it's a circle and it's got 12 numbers on it, right? And there's a second hand that goes around every minute, but there's a minute hand that takes a minute to click. Focus on that minute hand until it clicks, and then focus on it, right? It's a very, very patient process. But you can focus on anything. You can focus on the sound of a bird, on a nature sound. You can focus on your breath, body sensations. Someone asked me, what do I do while I'm standing in line and I'm 6 feet away from people and it takes ages how can I do something really good while I'm in line? I said, instead of using your phone and going like this, or instead of picking up Women's Day or whatever, some kind of magazine in the rack there, start noticing the swipe thing, the scanning code. Count the scanner code. Focus on only the scanning code. You don't hear her voice. You don't hear the baby crying. You don't hear the people, whatever. Just focus on the scanner code. She says, well, how is that different from me just picking up the magazine? I said, because you're choosing it. The magazine you just gravitated to and you're just flipping through it. You need to become the chooser, right? Or focus on your breath. You can stand there with a cart.
Your attention, yeah.
Where you put your attention, what you pay attention to is going to grow.
There's a couple of questions I'd like to ask about. Really, I think it addresses how meditation has, or our understanding of meditation has evolved. And maybe because I got into it, in the past 4 or 5 years. So at that time, meditation really was at a greater understanding. But what exactly, I'd like to get a really like simple understanding. What exactly is like, or how did the Rebbe define idolatry? What about these hints?
Okay, good, excellent,
What
excellent
about these?
question.
What about these? Postures, bells, or
So
never are
let's
so
so
negative
so
because I've
let's
seen a couple meditation retreats I'd love to also talk about, and it's when you shared that and how you like at the transcendental meditation, I'd only read experiences like that, and they're
yes, they're not as
they're
they're
not
not as
quite
vivid anymore. So here,
yeah,
let
because
me
I had to kind of work those. That was kind of something I had to emotionally work through because that also is kind of like a trigger that kind of prevented at a time experiencing or practicing the meditation because oh my God, I don't.
yeah, if I'm doing something that Hashem doesn't want me to do, even though it's very subtle.
Yeah.
So I'm in the meditation and I'm not. I'm resistant somehow unconsciously or subconsciously. I'm doing something like that first time when they brought me into that room and they initiated me. I was like, I felt, even as an ignorant, uneducated, I wasn't Orthodox, I was a Reformed little Jewish teenager, my neshama felt it. And I think in this society, we've become so desensitized. So what's wrong with a bell? What's wrong with a gong? What's wrong with a... Okay. So here's what the Rebbe spoke about was, again, we're not talking about a religious practice. Yes, he said, meditating on God's greatness is a beautiful Jewish practice.
Our sages
Meditating
didn't do that.
on the Shema Yisrael, or every day that you pray, you focus and have kavanagh, intention on what you're praying. So really kavanagh is the same thing as what we are trying to accomplish in meditation. And what is that? The word kavanagh comes from the word kivun. A kivun is a direction. Okay? So we're redirecting our thoughts to this focus, whether it's the breath or the minute hand of the clock or the bird tweeting, okay? Or the cash register scanner, okay? Doesn't matter what we focus on, the intentional focus is the point. Now, some of these things came from the East. Many of the things that we're familiar with currently did come from the East. The current mindfulness meditation movement is based in Buddhist meditation. You almost can't extract it if they're going to call it mindfulness, because mindfulness is a Pali translation, an English translation of a Pali term. Pali is the religious language of Buddhists. It's not Chinese or Mandarin. It's the religious language that's found in scripture. And the Hindu language that's found in their scripture, that's their holy tongue, is Sanskrit. That's not Hindi. Hindi is conversational Hindu language, Indian language. Whereas Jews, we have Ivrit, we've got spoken Hebrew, and then there's a language that's called Lashon HaKodesh, that all the holy Sfarim, the holy books, are written in. Pali is their holy language, referring to the books, the holy books that they have, and the whole philosophy of Buddha is in Pali. Now, those people who are really smart, and 90% are Jewish, took whatever good there was psychologically, right? Their general psychological things that are beneficial to everybody. You don't need to be a Buddhist to have a positive attitude. You don't need to be a Buddhist to have self-compassion. You don't need to be a Buddhist to have gratitude. By the way, you know, and I know, these things way preceded Buddhism and Judaism. Okay, we've got that stuff. So the philosophy stuff is not relevant to us. We got it.
Abraham's descendants, you know, he sent kids to
it says he sent his children with Keturah to the east with it says Shemos Hatuma with Rashi. They were kind of impure names. There was mysticism, but he knew that they would not be able to follow the Torah. So he gave them wisdom, and that was developed in a beautiful, incredible way for those cultures. They're brilliant, right? And we learn a lot from Ayurvedic medicine. We learn a lot about the meditation, but Judaism has its own sources. And what the Rebbe was trying to do here was bifurcate and split this out so carefully that you don't mix health and wellness with service of God.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you can integrate them, right? I intermittently fast. I've only been drinking today. I exercise. I have a trainer once a week. I am going for a massage now. That's why I had to run off the phone quickly. She just told me yesterday she's available. We were closed out for weeks because of COVID, right?
Yeah.
Right. Nothing personal, Solomon, but
no,
if it were you or her, sorry, I've been waiting for her for months. I don't even know you for a day. Okay. So you integrate these lifestyle practices to make it easier for you to pray. If I'm calm, I can focus on God.
Mm-hmm.
The Maggid of Mezrich,
yeah.
the student of the Baal Shem Tov and the predecessor of all of the Hasidic movements.
The Alter Rebbe, one of his students. Go ahead.
Right. So the Maggid of Mezrich was a contemporary of the Alter Rebbe, but he was the teacher who got them all together after the Baal Shem Tov. He said, a kleiner loch in kerper is a große loch in a neshama. A little hole in the body, a little defect in the body is a big hole in the soul. You didn't sleep, you can't daven, you can't love your fellow Jew, you can't behave nicely in business. You might yell at an employee. If you didn't eat well, maybe you're hypoglycemic. You had a muffin this morning, but you didn't eat until 2 p.m. So by 12, you're mistreating people. You got to take care of your body and your neshama and your mind. By the way, we didn't say what the third leg of the stool is. This is my prescription. It's a book called In Good Hands.
You even have a PDF for that on the website.
I do. I give that out. That's part of the three-legged stool prescription. Because I don't believe there's a person in the world who has anxiety that could remove their anxiety if they don't believe in God. Whether you're Lahavdil, Christian, Muslim, doesn't matter. So if you don't believe that God's going to get you through this problem, God's going to help me through. He sent me to the right therapist, or gave me the right parents, or he gave me the right friend. God is going to help me.
I'm sorry to jump in and cut off. It's just when this comes up, and like, I feel like it's often very important to return and make sure that we, not just you and I, but anybody listening, has like a good definition of what things are. So like when we talk about the idolatry, because if you use God, like, it may, people think we even if somebody may intellectually have an understanding of what God is, emotionally there's still this guy in the clouds that's going to.
So this is a very deep discussion. Solomon, Shlomo, Shlomo the Wise, we are going to have to do a second, but let me give you a little brief one before I close for today, because we can continue this. Mm-hmm. This is an important discussion, and it may be helpful for me as well, because I'm in the midst of writing a book for lay people, and maybe part of these discussions will be included in the book as what lay people would be asking me, right? What are people asking me? what is wrong with the elements? So here, let me tell you exactly what the Rebbe says in that talk and other things. And maybe the next time what we could do is focus on that talk and the elements of the talk. And if you go back in my blog, you'll find 11 points that my rabbi and I went through. We analyzed we analyzed the talk of the Rebbe from July 7th, 1979, and the letters that I'm referring to that people corresponded with the Rebbe about, and we took 11 main points. One of them is this that you're talking about, that it cannot have elements of idolatry. So what does the Rebbe say? Certainly direct idolatry. We can't bow to an idol, right? We can't use names of other gods or goddesses, right? That's clear and vivid idolatry, right? And then he says, but not even what's called avizraihu de avodah zorah, that's an Aramaic term that refers to the subtle accessories of an idolater. Okay? So now I know it sounds mean to call a Buddhist meditator an idolater, but they do use statues and stuff, but they don't believe in God. So it's a little confusing religion. They say you could believe in God if you want, but you don't have to. God is in you, which is also partially true, right? We believe we've got the neshama in us, but where the Torah is concerned is that you come up with your own conclusions after you've meditated enough. What right action is and right behavior. There's no halacha, there are no laws. There's recommendations to do the right thing. Well, who said what the right thing is if you don't believe in God and God didn't prescribe it? So the one issue is it's not our religion. It's not our religion. We've got our own traditions. So we've got religious traditions and meditative traditions, health traditions and wisdom traditions. We don't need it. So that's one thing. Then the Rebbe is telling us certainly not vivid idolatry, but what are the accessories he's talking about? So let's imagine a monk in his temple or even in his home. He's meditating. He might be in a particularly seated position. I'm sure you've seen gurus in the lotus position where their legs are crossed in a particular way and they're sitting on a zafu, a particular cushion on the floor. And that's how that Hindu or Buddhist meditator might meditate. They might use bells or chimes to bring their attention to the room. They may be using a singing bowl, a metal singing bowl, okay? And those in Buddhist meditation, those they signal the beginning and the focusing, and they signal the end of a meditation, okay? So
there was a little bit of that, I think, like when I went to a 10-day silent meditation retreat.
Of course, there's gonna be. They can't help it. They can't help. I'm letting you know, even in the biggest science books, even when I go to Harvard. I took a wonderful course last summer in August from Harvard, from Ronald Siegel. He's the nicest man in the world. He's Jewish, of course, Ronald Siegel. And his brother's the famous Daniel Siegel from UCLA, right? Mindfulness, they're both into it. But I can't help it. Of course, I learned Buddhist philosophy in that course, but it's Harvard. But whoever studied that first is going to drip it through. If they're not a committed, let's say, religious Jew who's concerned about that, or a committed religious Christian who runs away. By the way, religious Christians are more scared of this stuff, these things that you are talking about now, than Jews are. Jews are very open-minded. Sure, I'll try it. I'll try a retreat. I'll try this. If they saw that, they would run to the hills. They're scared. They've got all sorts of organizations against TM going into the public schools. There's a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, R.E.A. Siegel from Los Angeles. You may want to interview him. He's fascinating. He was a TM teacher. He's got a book that just came out 4 years ago, Transcendental Deception.
Yeah. I'll have to look into this, but
yeah. So the point is any of those things.
Questions.
So So I'm allowed to sit on the floor,
Yeah.
but I don't have to sit on the floor.
No,
If
I
I'm
mean, if
comfortable
anything,
in a,
no, like if anything, there's another guy who is a scientist whose meditations I practice. If anything, he says actually your blood flow is better when you're sitting in a chair. So
look, I don't know why, but they follow customs that are not necessarily currently important or necessary or relevant. So what the Rebbe is saying is remove any customs that are associated with it that they're insisting upon. I went to a very big one, a mindfulness-based cognitive therapy course by another Siegel. He spells his last name differently, Zindel Siegel. These are all what I call Bujus. They're scientists, but they're the Buddhist philosophy is more theirs than Jewish philosophy because no one taught that to them. Like I wasn't taught in Sunday school, right? And
it's a
you
lot of
can't help it. Buddhism, there was University of,
Ramdas was Jewish.
yeah, so they all were. We'll talk about that another time, but
This is part one, everybody.
this is part one, everybody.
I know we yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but that course was at University of Toronto. It wasn't some ashram that I went to. I'm going to courses, scientific courses, and Buddhism drips in. They wanted you to be on the floor. They wanted you to take off your shoes. Maybe that's because it's Canada. They wanted you to sit in a particular position. No, I said, Dr. Siegel, I'm going to sit on a chair if you don't mind. Okay, they did use the Tingsha symbols. They did use the bowls, but I was taking a course and I will be exposed so that I can know what to give to my clients and my students.
This may be a good place to end. I know you need to start going.
I need to run anyway, yes.
What exactly, and it might take a longer answer, so if you would like
I'll
to
let you know if it's for part 2 or 3 or 6 or 12.
Well, what exactly is so, for lack of a better word, negative about it, if your intention is pure? So like when
well, it's not that it's negative. Is there anything wrong with going? I mean, what would be wrong?
If I'm sitting, because sometimes
it's not negative. It's not negative. It's just that the Torah does not want a Jew using accessories from other religions. Would you go to a Catholic priest and say, hey, could you send a couple pieces of host to my house? I want to dip them into my little Nova and cream cheese dip. Would you take a religious item from a church? Why would we take it from a Buddhist temple? Why would we take it from a Hindu guru? The Rebbe is saying anything that is idolatrous, like a bowing to an idol or a person, or anything that's even an accessory for that service that maybe now they don't really do all that stuff so much. And maybe Dr. So-and-so, Dr. Goldberg from University of such and such doesn't do all that stuff, but there's still a little chime. I take a neurocoaching course. I skip the first 30 seconds. Don't tell him because he plays the bowl. I know he does it every time. I don't want to listen to it because the Rebbe doesn't want. And let me just add one more element. It's not the Rebbe, it's the Torah. That bowl that we bring to America that got imported from Tibet or China or India or Pakistan, who said somebody didn't intone their religious intonations into that bowl when he was meditating? Who said it wasn't used for idolatry? I'm not buying a brand new bowl that was created just export. We don't know where those things come from. I have a rabbinic psak, a halachic decision from my particular Rav, who has to know these modern things that are going on. And he says, if you want to use the singing bowls for therapeutic purposes and sound healing, then you have to buy a brand new crystal quartz bowl that was bought from the warehouse. I have 3 of them. They're like the cost of a car. They're fabulous and they make a gorgeous sound, but I don't use them in meditation because that's idolatrous practice before and ending a meditation. But I use it for sound healing, as the Rav told me. We can use the things in what are called klipas noga, in the neutral territory for the good. That's why the Rebbe wants people to meditate.
That's what it means. It's
using
Like
the
carb.
neutral for the good. Don't take the other religions and then bring them into your stuff. Take the neutral and elevate it. So now I will depart, but
Yeah.
Solomon, I think we've got a little ongoing conversation,
Yeah.
and I look forward to helping you understand better and sharing with your audience. I think this will be very informative.
Yes.
All right. We'll schedule it another time, but nice meeting you, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much, Devorah.
Thank you.
We'll be in contact.